My name is Marissa Frias, and I'm the Tobacco Use Prevention Education Intervention Specialist with the Contra Costa County Office of Education. And with me tonight is Emily Justice, our TUPE manager, and we will be your presenters this evening.
Thank you, Marissa. So just before we dive into the content, we want to share a little bit about us. So Tobacco Use Prevention Education, or TUPE for short, is a program in the Student Programs Department at the County Office of Education in Contra Costa County. Our goal is to prevent or reduce tobacco use among young people, and this includes some of the newest and most popular products on the market, e-cigarettes and vape pens. We work alongside hundreds of educators and students and families every year, supporting all 18 school districts in our county. And we also provide direct services to our own county office programs. And our approach is comprehensive. So it includes classroom-based prevention programs in our participating middle and high schools, support for those who are currently using tobacco to cut back or quit, programs that actively engage young people as partners in our prevention work, staff professional development, and then family and community engagement.
All right. And as we begin our presentation, we want to share some assumptions that we have brought with us into this space. First, parents, guardians, and other caring adults want what is best for the young people in their lives, that every family deserves support and access to culturally and linguistically appropriate resources. And third, that support and services must be provided in a way that best meets the needs of individual families. And what we're going to be covering this evening is we're going to be following topics during our time together: adolescent substance use data, an overview of the adolescent brain, and what we can do to support young people who may be struggling with alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, and or other substances.
Before we share some local self-reported data regarding how many young people report current alcohol, tobacco, or other drug use, we want to take a moment to check our own perceptions with regards to use of substances among young people. So I just want you to think to yourself, what percentage of Contra Costa County ninth graders, so first year in high school, what percentage of ninth graders report current alcohol and or other drug use? So current use, to us, we define as within the last 30 days, the last month. So I just want you to take a moment to think about, what percentage of young people in our communities report current use of alcohol or other drugs. I'll give you a moment to think about that, and then I'm going to reveal the answer. So for our county, I want you to take a look and see that the majority of young people, most young people in our county, are not currently using substances. With that said, we do not want to minimize the fact that there are young people who do report current use, and that this does have an impact on them, their peers, our school communities, and of course their families. So looking at this data, and this is the most current county level data that we have, 4% of grade 7 students report alcohol and or other drug use. 10% of ninth graders report current use. And then 23, so almost 1 out of 4 11th graders report current use. And so what that means is that if we had a group of 20 11th graders with us, about 4 to 5 of them would report current use within the last 30 days. So as we're looking at this data, I want you to think about what your guess was. So what was your perception on what percentage of ninth graders were using substances? Often, both young people and adults, when we ask that question, they overestimate how many young people are using drugs. And this can be because of a few different factors. One is that drug use stories often stand out a lot more than non-drug use stories. So it definitely draws attention. Media portrayal of young people often reinforces stereotypes that exist about young people, including substance use. Often our news media is highlighting alarming, serious issues with regards to substances, but not necessarily widespread trends that are happening. And then, of course, our own personal and professional experience might influence, how prevalent we think substance use is. And this is really important because perception of use can actually be one of the things that influences a young person's decision to use or not. So we always want to reiterate that most young people are not currently using, but also recognize the seriousness of the issue still in our communities. So I have another question for you, and this one is, at what age is the brain considered fully developed? So again, I'm going to give you a moment to think about that as we start to talk about the adolescent brain. So as you're probably aware, our brain is the control center of our body. It is what drives our thoughts, our feelings, and our related actions. Each part of the brain has its own function, but they operate as a connected network. So the first part of the brain to develop is the brainstem. This is responsible for all of our survival functions. So things like regulating our breathing, our heart rate, and our balance. The limbic system is the next system to develop in the brain. And this is the emotional response center of the brain. So this includes our fight or flight response when faced with, perceived or real dangers. It is also the part of the brain that is very well developed in young people. The cortex is the outer part of the brain. It's what helps the two hemispheres of our brain to communicate and work together. And then lastly is the prefrontal cortex. And this is responsible for all of our higher level cognitive functioning. So things like complex planning and decision making and self-regulation of behavior. And this prefrontal cortex, this is the part of the brain that is still in development during the teen years and is actually going through a very rapid period of development. So the three main things we always want to keep in mind is that the teen brain is a work in progress, and that is a good thing. It's still in development phase. The teen brain is growing until about age 25. So that's the answer to the question we asked earlier. So think about what you thought and what that age is. And then the teen brain presents both opportunities and challenges. So again, adolescence, time of opportunity. We as caring adults can really work alongside young people to create spaces that leverage where they are with brain development. So for example, really encouraging them to participate in positive and healthy risk-taking behaviors, which can include trying out new activities, building relationships with peers, and also building relationships and working with other caring adults. And then with that said, that's the opportunity side of things. On the risk side of things, risky behaviors, including things like tobacco and other drug use, more strongly impacts the adolescent brain because it is still in development. And so use during the adolescence is going to have a stronger impact. It's going to impair the brain's ability to develop. And young people who begin using while the brain is still in development are much more likely to become addicted and have trouble quitting use once they start, much more easily than adults. So the other piece that we want to share about brain development is a challenge that we have as adults working with young people in our personal and professional lives, is that identifying the signs that a young person may be experiencing a substance use or mental health challenge can look an awful lot like typical brain development. And so it can be difficult for us to tell whether a young person is just going through normal adolescent development, or if some of the behaviors that they're exhibiting might be cause for concern. So, for example, whether we like it or not, young people during the teenage years begin withdrawing from family. This is typical, and it's so that they can spend more time connecting with their peers. So that typical adolescent behavior. A possible sign for concern is if a young person is withdrawing from everyone in their life. So if they're, if they're in a space of isolation, that could be cause for concern with regards to mental health and/or substance use issues. Some other things that might be typical behavior or a sign that that a young person might need more help is problems, sleep-related problems, behavior changes, anxiety relating to school. So some school avoidance is totally normal, but if they're unable to regulate how they feel about going to school, that might be a sign that they need additional support. Pushing back against boundaries that adults have set is totally normal, but if there's an escalation in that behavior to the point, especially of breaking laws, then that is definitely a sign for concern. And then engaging in risk-taking behavior. So some of that is totally normal, as we talked about with the brain. Their brains are seeking out those risk-taking behaviors, but where it might be a possible sign for concern is what types of risk-taking behaviors are they engaging in. So if they're engaging in regular or excessive use of substances, this is definitely something we want to tend to and find out how we can provide additional support.
And we will review some things caring adults can do to support a young person who is struggling with tobacco or other substance use. Some of those things that they can do include acquire knowledge, explore personal value and beliefs, talk early and often, reduce access at home, and then care for self and others. And I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into some of those. So acquire knowledge. As Emily mentioned, you do not need to be the expert on adolescent brain, adolescent substance use. However, it is beneficial to become more knowledgeable about the adolescent brain, about adolescent substance use, as well as the signs and symptoms to look out for. And this will help you better understand and support the young person in your life. And we're going to watch a video from the National Institute on Drug Abuse about why substances are hard to stop using.
Addiction and substance use disorders are often misunderstood. Some people believe continuing to use drugs even when they cause harm is a sign of weakness or poor character, but that's far from the truth. Many years of research show that substance use disorders are complex, chronic, and treatable medical conditions that involve changes in our brains. Researchers think it works like this. Our brains have what scientists call a reward system. Behaviors that help us survive and stay healthy produce small increases in naturally occurring brain chemicals called neurotransmitters in parts of the reward system related to pleasure. That helps explain why biting into a favorite food, seeing someone you love smile, or learning something new can all feel so rewarding. When we engage in new, rewarding behaviors, the brain also builds connections between that behavior and related cues, like sights, sounds, or feelings that remind us of that reward. That's why just walking by a restaurant that smells good can make us hungry. And that's a good thing. This system motivates us to repeat behaviors that help us survive, such as eating, caring for each other, or honing new skills. Drugs are chemicals that mimic the neurotransmitters of the brain's reward system. But in many cases, using drugs can affect the reward system more powerfully than other activities. For some of us, using drugs repeatedly can change the way certain areas of the brain work and communicate with each other. These changes can make it harder to enjoy healthy activities, and people sometimes start to need to use drugs to feel good or okay. Suddenly stopping or significantly reducing regular drug use may even cause withdrawal symptoms that can range from powerful negative emotions, to flu-like symptoms, to life-threatening emergencies. Many withdrawal symptoms are treatable, though for many, using drugs may feel like the only way to alleviate them. With repeated drug use, the brain may also build much stronger connections between drugs and cues associated with them, cues that may be difficult to avoid. Some people call these triggers, or people, places, things, and feelings that remind a person of using drugs and can make them really want to use them again. Repeated drug use can also weaken circuits in the brain that help people exercise self-control and tolerate stress. This can make it even more difficult for people to control their drug use, even when it causes harm, when it doesn't feel the way it used to, or when it gets in the way of other parts of someone's life. These can be signs of a substance use disorder. While certain factors make substance use disorders more likely to occur in some people than in others, anyone can develop a substance use disorder, whatever their race and ethnicity, sex and gender, or economic status. Addiction can make quitting drugs or controlling drug use very difficult without support, no matter how much someone wants to stop or cut back. When someone tries to stop using drugs, the strong associations between drugs and related cues and new or ongoing experiences of stress may lead them to experience cravings and use drugs again. Returning to use after stopping or relapse is not uncommon, and like addiction itself, it's not a sign of weakness. While drugs can change the brain, treatments and time can change it too. People can heal from an addiction, especially when they get the support they need to relieve withdrawal symptoms, navigate triggers, and make positive changes. Researchers have developed therapies to support recovery, including safe and effective medications for some substance use disorders like opioid use disorder. And because each person and brain is unique, researchers continue to learn more about how drugs and addiction work. They are always looking for new and better ways to prevent, treat, and manage substance use disorders in every person and every community. If you or someone you care about has a substance use disorder, you can learn more about getting help by calling the National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP or by visiting findtreatment.gov. To learn more about substance use and addiction research, log on to nida.nih.gov.
All right. So NIDA actually created that video to help youth better understand the science of addiction, why stopping drug use can be difficult, and to let them know that help is available. So if you have a young person in your life that you think will benefit from this video, please feel free to share it with them. And in the follow-up email, we will share the link with you.
So our second tips, or our second item that we want to talk about is around exploring and framing our own personal values and beliefs. So every person has, individual kind of rules and guiding principles that impact their actions, also impacts our view of others' actions. And these may come from our own family background, our personal experience, our cultural background, spiritual beliefs, from many, many different places. And so, and there isn't anything right or wrong about somebody's values or beliefs, because those are unique to each person or each community. The opportunity we do have, though, as a community, is to really try and shift based on the data that we know and we have available, is shift from this belief that drugs are just an inevitable part of adolescent development, because we know, again, that most young people are not using. And there are ways that we can respond if there's young people who are struggling with use. And the earlier we can intervene, the better chance we have that we can, increase periods of non-use, that we can delay any future use until the brain is fully developed. So really, it's about helping us as, a network of caring adults to really shift our thinking from adolescent substance use as inevitable and irreversible to adolescent substance use as preventable and treatable. So it's about prevention as well as intervention. And with that, I do want to invite you on a little self-reflection. And so I want you to take a moment to just think back to when you were a young person. So that is something we all have in common. We were all young people at one time. And so think back to when you were a young person, probably like middle school or high school age. And what I want to invite you to do is think about an adult in your life that you knew cared about you. So this could be somebody who is, was an educator, was a teacher in your life. It could be a parent or other family member. It could be a sports coach or a spiritual leader. Somebody who ran a club that you were part of, just some adult who you knew cared about you. Okay, so I want you to visualize that person. And then I want you to think, how did you know that that person cared about you? So what did that person say and do that communicated to you that they cared? Just give you a moment to think about that. And we ask this question of adults, and we also ask this question about with young people. So we ask young people, how do you know who cares about you and how do you know? And what the themes that continually come up are not expensive. They aren't these necessarily grand gestures of caring. Some of the things that come up is that they were consistent, that they noticed when I wasn't there, right? That they checked in with me, that they asked me questions to get to know me. They remembered things about me, right? They supported me both through my successes as well as when I messed up, that they were still there for me along the way. And so there's kind of these consistent themes that come up with regards to when we think about those adults, is that there's some qualities that we see over and over. Another thing we hear from young people is that they were non-judgmental and they listened to me. And so just thinking about what was important to us as young people and what really stuck with us are those same things that we can do for the young people in our lives. So using our own lived experience to guide how we approach the young people who are in our care personally and professionally.
Thank you, Emily. One of my favorite ones that I get from young people is, she showed me respect, and they really appreciate that. So it is important to start the conversation early and to have ongoing conversations with young people where they feel safe and open to ask questions, to share their thoughts, experiences, and feelings with you. Even if them sharing the things that they like about using substances make it awkward or difficult for you to hear, it's important for you to be able to listen to what they share and to take that in. Encourage a young person to talk to you by being open, receptive to what they share and providing guidance when needed. And an effective conversation begins with looking at the language we use and the messages we send to the young person we want to support. This includes using non-stigmatizing person-first language, such as person with substance use disorder instead of a drug addict. It is helpful to designate a time and to be mindful of the setting. The young people may feel more comfortable talking about substance use or mental health with you in private than in a group setting, or vice versa. And meal times and traveling are actually good times too, and it provides an opportunity to have conversations and to build that trust. Also, try questions like, what do you need? How can I support you? Instead of, what is wrong with you? One thing, when I'm working with young people, they often say, when I ask them, what do you not like about using, and they say, the way people look at me or the way people think of me because I use. So it's something that they're going through, and you want to be there to support them and talk them through it, and often. And this is actually, I'm going to show you an example of a scenario and some questions that you can ask yourself as you're looking through the scenario. So a young person in your life is no longer hanging out with their young sibling who they have always been close to, or their core group of friends. They have also been more irritable lately and quick to get upset over the things that didn't seem to bother them much before. You recently found a vape pen in their room, and when you asked them about it, they said it was not theirs, and they were just holding it for a friend. So some questions to ask yourself as you're reading this. What might be considered normal adolescent behavior? Another question would be, what may be cause for concern based on the scenario? And how might you approach the situation? And then the last one, how might you approach this young person? And this is just one example of a scenario, and going back to what Emily had shared about normal adolescent behavior and cause for concern. Just thinking about this and answering those questions would be really helpful as you prepare to support a young person that may be struggling.
And I also like to remind people, like, trust your gut. Like, if something doesn't feel right to you, you're probably right. You might not know the exact underlying issue, and you probably don't unless you're a trained professional to identify those underlying issues. But if something doesn't feel right, don't let it go. Like, just and use some of those communication strategies to approach. So another thing we want to touch on is that so the drugs that are popular among young people are also the most likely to be legal for adult use. So it's not it's not a like mistake, or it's not I can't think of the word right now. It's the fact that these drugs are legal for adult use means that they're more readily available in our communities. And so, and not just at homes. So we can't, place all of the blame within the home situation, because this is an industry-driven problem, right? These products are out in the market because of companies. However, we can look at what's within our scope of control. So, yes, young people are sometimes able to access these products outside of the home, either through social sources or from retailers in the community. But if there are alcohol, cannabis, or tobacco products within your home, it is important to make sure that they're not accessible to young people. And also, it's important to set clear boundaries and expectations around use within your home. Also, we sometimes forget about medications, because yes, medications are important for to treat many different health related issues, but they can also be misused and abused. And so making sure that our medications are also locked up or properly disposed if we have extra or if they are expired. And there are medication disposal sites in our communities. And so you can take them to a place where it's safe to dispose of them, so they're no longer in your home if they're no longer needed. And then you might also want to consider, if you have a child who is going to a physician for health-related issues, you might want to talk about what are some of the alternatives to prescription painkillers or opioids. So there are some alternative options that can work for some young people and adults with regards to pain management. And so making sure that you're having those conversations with your medical professionals.
All right, care for self and others is probably not the first time that you heard about how important it is to take care of yourself, just as you take care of others. But taking care of yourself and others by utilizing and encouraging self-help strategies. This goes for both young people and caring adults, right? So self-help and self-care is personal. So develop your own self-care plan by brainstorming the people and activities that improve your own mental and physical health. By brainstorming a list of people, places, and things that support your own self-care, we can inspire and encourage the young people around us to also do the same. We can intervene early and often. The sooner we can work with a young person on understanding the harms of use and helping them identify healthy coping mechanisms, the more likely they either won't use or they will reduce or quit if they are already using. And it's important to also seek appropriate professional help when needed. And we will provide some resources for that as well. So this is a fun activity to do, and it's a good activity to do with adults or young people, and it's something that I, in a way, do with the students that I work with who are struggling with use. And it's really like this self-care brainstorm about who are the people who can support you, and identifying a list of people who are out there that are able to support you. And a good way when you're working with a young person is to help them identify if there's adult in their personal life, an adult in their school environment, in different environments. So when they need that support, they can go to those areas for support. And the next one is identifying what are the places or spaces that support your well-being. And when you are in a situation, or if a young person is in a situation where they want to use, where is the place that you can go that will distract your mind and not want to use at that time? It can be a park, it can be your bedroom, it can be, different areas will resonate with different young people, but helping them identify a list of places that they can go, safe places where they feel comfortable, will be very beneficial as you're trying to help them identify ways to either reduce or quit use. And then the last one is identifying what things or activities contribute to your well-being. We didn't mention this, but we did talk about brain development, and dopamine being one of the things that's released to our brain is dopamine. And when people use substances, dopamine is released to their brain, what brings pleasure. But there's also other things that release dopamine to your brain that brings pleasure, such as working out, physical activity kind of things, riding a bike. Some people enjoy doing arts and crafts and writing music, and just helping them expand their minds and their thinking on what other things they can be doing for self-care. And that way, as their brain is still developing until they're 25 years old, they are able to incorporate some other healthy coping mechanisms to get them through when they're wanting to use. So this is a great activity to do in a brainstorm. And then these are some resources that we wanted to leave you with. We have our TUPE website, and you can find additional resources for families on our website. We also have our past recordings. So if you're interested in seeing those, we will have this recording also on our website. And then we have the Contra Costa Crisis Center, which is an access line, and I believe it's available 24 hours. So if you have a young person or yourself that needs support, reach out to the Contra Costa Crisis Center. Kick It California is a free program to quit smoking or vaping and smokeless tobacco. So that's their website if you're interested to learn more about the services that they provide. And then we also have the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit and the Cannabis Awareness Prevention Toolkit. There's a lot of great information on both of those websites. And there's actually a parent section with more information and talking points and how to talk with your young person about these tobacco prevention and cannabis awareness.